Let us study accounting standard 3, that is cash flow statement. Cash flow statement. The accounting standard includes paragraphs set in bold, italic type and plain type which have equal authority. Paragraph in bold italic type indicates main principle. These accounting standards should be read in context to the objective, the preface to statement of accounting standards and the applicability of accounting standards to various entities. The accounting standard is not mandatory for small and medium-sized companies and nor non-corporate level falling in level 2 and level 3 as defining applicability of accounting standard to various entities. Such entities are, however, encouraged to comply with these standards. This standard means this accounting standard is not applicable to level 2 and level 3. They are encouraged to follow these accounting standards also. Objective: information about the cash flow of the enterprise is useful in providing users of financial statement with the basis to assess the ability of enterprise to generate cash and cash equivalents and the need of the enterprise to utilize those cash flows. The economic decisions that are taken by users require an evaluation of the ability of enterprise to generate cash and cash equivalents and the timing and certainty of their generation. The standard deals with the provision of information about the historical changes in cash and cash equivalents of an enterprise by means of a cash flow statement which classifies cash flow during the period from operating, investing and financing activities. Scope: an enterprise should prepare a cash flow statement and should present it for each period for which financial statements are presented. User in an enterprise financial statements are interested in how the enterprise generates and uses cash and cash equivalents. This is a case regardless of the nature of enterprise activity and irrespective of whether cash can be viewed as a product of enterprise, as may be the case with a financial enterprise. Enterprise needs cash for essentially the same reason. However different their principal revenue producing activities might be, they need cash to conduct their operations, to pay their obligations and to provide returns to their investors. Benefit of cash flow information. A cash flow statement, when used in conjunction with other financial statements, provides information that enables users to evaluate the changes in net assets of an enterprise, its financial structure including its liquidity and solvency, and its ability to affect the amount and the timing of cash flows in order to adapt to changing circumstances and opportunities. Cash flow information is useful in assessing the ability of enterprise to generate cash and cash equivalents and enable users to develop models to assess and compare the present value of the future cash flow of different enterprise. It also enhances the comparability of the reporting of operating performance by different enterprises because it eliminates the effects of using different accounting treatments of same transactions and events. Historical cash flow information is often used as an indicator of the amount, timing and certainly of future cash flow. It is also useful in checking the accuracy of past assessments of future cash flows and in examining the relationship between profitability and net cash flow and the impact of changing prices. Definitions: the following terms are used in this standard with meaning specified. What is the attention here? Attention is specifically drawn to paragraph 4.3 of the preface, according to which accounting standard intended to apply only to those which is material. Okay. Cash comprises cash of hand and demand deposits with banks. Cash equivalents are short-term, highly liquid investments that are readily converted spill into known amounts of cash and which are subject to insignificant risk of changes in value. Cash flow is our inflow of and outflow of cash and cash equivalents. Operating activities are the principal revenue producing activities of enterprise and other activities that are not investing or financing activities. Investing activities are the acquisitions and disposals of long-term assets and other investments are not included in cash equivalents. Financing activities are activities that result in changes in the size and composition of owner's capital, including preference share capital in case of company and borrowing of the enterprise. Cash and cash equivalents. Cash equivalents are held for the purpose of meeting short-term cash commitments rather than for investing and other purpose. For an investment to qualify as cash equivalent, it must be readily convertible to a known amount of cash and be subject to insignificant risk of changes in value. Therefore, an investment normally qualifies as cash equivalent only when it has short maturity of, say, 3 months or less from the date of acquisition. Investment in shares are excluded from cash equivalent unless they are in substance cash equivalent. For example, preference share of a company acquired shortly before their specified redemption date, provided there is only an insignificant risk of failure of company to repay the amount at maturity. Cash flow excludes movement between items that contribute cash and cash equivalents because these components are parts of the cash management of an enterprise rather than part of its operating, investing, and financing activities. Cash management includes the investment of excess cash in cash equivalent. Presentation of a cash flow statement. The cash flow statement should report cash flow during the period classified by operating, investing, and financing activities. An enterprise presents its cash flows from operating, investing, and financing activities in a manner in which is most appropriate to its business. Classification by activities provide information that allow user to assess the impact of those activities on financial position of the enterprise and the amount of cash and cash equivalent. This information may also be used to evaluate the relationship among those activities. A single transaction may include cash flows that are classified differently. For example, when the installment paid in respect to a fixed asset acquired on deferred payment basis includes both interest and loan. The interest element is classified under financing activities and loan element is classified under investing activities. Operating activities. The amount of cash flows arising from operating activities is a key indicator to the extent to which the operations of enterprise have generated sufficient cash flows to maintain the operating capability of the enterprise, pay dividends, repay loans, and make new investments without recourse to external sources of financing. Information such as about the specific component of historical operating cash flow is useful in conjugation with other information in forecasting future operating cash flows. Cash flows from operating activities are primarily derived from the principal revenue producing activities of the enterprise. Therefore, they are generally results of the transactions and other events that enter into the determination of net profit or loss. Example of cash flow from operating activities are cash received from sales of goods and rendering of services, cash received from royalties, fees, commission, and other revenues, cash payment to supplier of goods and services, cash payment to and on behalf of employees, cash receipts and cash payment of an insurance enterprise of premiums and claims, annuities and other policy benefits, cash payments to refund of income tax unless they are specifically identified with finance and investing activities, and cash receipts and payments relating to future contracts, forward contracts, opinion contracts, swap contracts, and when the contracts are held for dealing or trading purpose. Some transactions such as sale of an item or plant which may give rise to gain or loss, which is included in determination of net profit or loss. However, cash flows relating to such transactions are cash flow from investing activities. An enterprise may hold securities and loans for dealing or trading purpose, in which case they are similar to inventory acquired specifically for resale. Therefore, cash flow arising from purchase and sale of dealing of trading securities are classified as operating activities. Similarly, cash advances and loans made by financial enterprises are usually classified as operating activities since they relate to main revenue producing activity of the enterprise. Investing activities. The separate disclosure of cash flow arising from investing activities is important because the cash flow represents the extent to which expenditure have been made for the resources intended to generate future income and cash flows. Examples of cash flow arising from investing activities are cash payment to acquire fixed assets including intangibles. These payments include those relating to capitalized research and development costs and self-constructed fixed assets, cash received from disposal of fixed assets including intangibles, cash payment to acquire shares, warrants or debt instruments and other enterprise, and interest in joint venture other than payment of those instruments considered to be cash equivalent and those held for dealing or trading purposes. Cash received from from disposal of shares, warrants, or debt instruments and other enterprise, and interest in joint venture other than those received from those instruments considered to be cash equivalent and those held in dealing or trading purpose. Cash advances and loans made to third parties other than advances and loans made by financial enterprise. Cash received from the repayment of advances and loans made by third parties other than advances and loans of a financial enterprise. Cash payments of future contracts, forward contracts, option contracts, and swap contracts expect when the contracts are held for dealing or trading purpose or payments are classified as financing activities, and cash received from future contracts, forward contracts, option contracts, and swap contracts except when the contracts are held for dealing or trading purpose or the receipts are classified as financing activities. When the contract is accounted for as a hedge of a identifiable position, the cash flows of a contract are classified in the same manner as cash flows from the position being hedged. Financing activities. A separate disclosure of cash flow arising from financing activities is important because it is useful in predicting claims on future cash flows by providers of funds, both capital and borrowing, to the enterprise. Examples of cash flow arising from financing activities are cash proceeds from issuing shares or other similar instruments, cash proceeds from issuing debentures, loans, notes, bonds, and other short or long-term borrowing, and cash repayments of amounts borrowed. Reporting cash flow from operating activities. An enterprise should report cash flow from operating activities using either the direct method whereby major classes of gross cash received and gross cash payments are disclosed, or by indirect method whereby net profit or loss is adjusted for the effect of transactions of a non-cash nature. Any deferrals or accruals of past or future operating cash received or payment, and items of income and expenses associated with investing or financing cash flows. The direct method provides information which may be useful in estimating future cash flows and which is not available under indirect method and is therefore considered more appropriate than indirect method. Under direct method, information about major classes of gross cash receipts and gross cash payments may be obtained either from the accounting records of enterprise or by adjusting sales, cost of sales, interest and similar income and interest expense and similar charges of a financial enterprise and other items in the statement of profit and loss for changes during the period in inventories and operating receivable and payable, other non-cash items, and other items for which cash effects may are investing or financing cash flows. Under the indirect method, the net cash flow from operating activities is determined by adjusting net profit or loss for the effect of changes during the period in inventories and operating receivable and payable. Non-cash items such as depreciation, provision, deferred law and unrealized foreign exchange gains and losses and all other items for which cash effects are investing or financing cash flows. Alternatively, the net cash flow from operating activities may be presented under the indirect method by showing the operating revenues and expenses excluding non-cash items disclosed in the statement of profit and loss and the changes during the period in inventories and operating receivable and the payable. Reporting cash flow from investing and financing activities. An enterprise should report separately major classes of gross cash receipts and gross cash payment arising from investing and financing activities, except to the extent that cash flow described in paragraph 22 and 24 are reported on a net basis. Reporting cash flows on a net basis. Cash flows arising from following operating, investing or financing activities may be reported on a net basis. Cash receipt and payment on behalf of customers which when the cash flow reflects the activities of the customer rather than those of the enterprise and cash receipts and payments for items in which the turnover is quick, the amounts are large and the maturities are short. Examples of cash receipts and payments referred to in the paragraph 22A are the acceptance of repayment and demand deposit by bank, funds held for customer by an investment enterprise and rent collected on behalf of paid over to the owner of property. Examples of cash receipts and payments referred to paragraph 22B are advances made for and the repayment of principal amount relating to credit card customers, the purchase and sale of investment and other short-term borrowings, for example, those which have a maturity period of 3 months or less. Cash flow arising from each of the following activities of a financial enterprise may be reported on a net basis. Cash receipts and payments for the acceptance and repayment of deposits with a fixed maturity date, the placement of deposits with and withdrawal of deposits from other financial enterprise and cash advances and other loans made to customer and repayment of those advances and loans. Foreign currency cash flows. Cash flows arising from transactions in foreign currency should be recorded in an enterprise reporting currency by applying to foreign currency amount the exchange rate between the reporting currency and the foreign currency at the date of the cash flow. A rate that approximates the actual rate may be used if results in subsequently the same as would arise if the rate at the date of cash flows were used. The effect of changes in exchange rates on cash and cash equivalents held in a foreign currency should be reported as a separate part of the reconciliation of the changes in cash and cash equivalents during the period. Cash flows demonetized, cash flows denominated in foreign currency are reported in a manner consistent with accounting standard S11. The effects of change in foreign exchange rate. This permits the use of a exchange rate that approximates the actual rate. For example, a weighted average exchange rate for a period may be used for recording foreign currency transactions. Unrealized gain and loss arising from changes in foreign exchange rates are not cash flows. However, the effect of exchange rate changes on cash and cash equivalents held or due to a foreign currency is reported in cash flow statement in order to reconcile cash and cash equivalents at the beginning and the end of period. This amount is presented separately from cash flow from operating, investing and financing activities and includes the differences, if any, had those cash flow been reported at the end of period exchange rate. Extraordinary item. The cash flow associated with extraordinary items should be classified as arising from operating, investing, and financing activities as appropriate and separately disclosed. The cash flows associated with extraordinary items are disclosed separately as arising from operating, investing, or financing activities in the cash flow statement to enable users to understand their nature and effect of the present and future cash flows of the enterprise. These disclosures are in addition to separate disclosures of the nature and the amount of extraordinary item required by Accounting Standard 5 AS5, net profit and loss for the prior period item and changes in accounting policies. Interest and dividends. Cash flows from interest and dividends received and paid should be disclosed separately. Cash flows arising from interest paid and interest and dividends received in the case of financial enterprise should be classified as cash flows arising from operating activities. In the case of other enterprise, cash flows arising from interest paid should be classified as cash flow from financing activities, while interest and dividends received should be classified as cash flow from investing activities. Dividends paid should be classified as cash flow from financing activities. The total amount of interest paid during the period is disclosed in the cash flow statement whether it has been recognized as an expense in the statement of profit and loss or capitalized in the accordance with accounting standard 10 accounting for fixed assets. Interest paid and interest and dividends received are usually classified as operating cash flows for a finance enterprise. However, there is no consensus on the classification of these cash flows for other enterprise. Some argue that interest paid and interest and dividends received may be classified as operating cash flows because they entered into determination of net profit or loss. However, it is more appropriate that interest paid and interest and dividends received and classified as financing cash flows and investing cash flows respectively because they are a cost for obtaining financial resources or returns on investment. Some argue that dividends paid may be classified as component of cash flows from operating activities in order to assist users to determine the ability of enterprise to pay dividends out of operating cash flows. However, it is considered more appropriate that dividends paid should be classified as cash flows from financing activities because they are cost of obtaining financial resources. Taxes on income. Cash flows arising from taxes on income should be separately disclosed and should be classified as cash flow from operating activities, unless they can be specifically identified with financing and investing activities. Taxes on income arises on transactions that give rise to cash flows that are classified as operating, investing, or financing activities in cash flow statements. While tax expense may be readily identifiable with investing or financing activities, the related tax cash flows are often impracticable to identify and may arise in a different period from the cash flow of the underlying transactions. Therefore, taxes paid are usually classified as cash flow from operating activities. However, when there is a practicable However, when it is practicable to identify the tax cash flow with an individual transaction that give rise to cash flow that are classified as investing or financing activities, the tax cash flow is classified as an investing or financing activity as appropriate. When tax cash flow are collected over more than one class of activity, the total amount of tax paid is disclosed. Investment in subsidiary, associate, and joint venture. When accounting of an investment in an associate or a subsidiary or a joint venture, an investor restricts its reporting to the cash flow statement to the cash flow between itself and investee joint venture. For example, cash flow relating to dividends and advances, acquisitions and disposals of subsidiaries and other business units. The aggregate cash flows arising from acquisitions and from disposals of subsidiaries or other business units should be presented separately and classified as investing activities. An enterprise should disclose in aggregate in respect of both acquisitions and disposals of subsidiaries or other business units during the period each of the following: total purchase of disposal, consideration and the portion of the purchase or disposal consideration discharged by the means of cash and cash equivalents. The separate presentation of cash flow effects of acquisition and disposals of subsidiaries and other business units as single line items helps to distinguish those cash flows from other cash flows. The cash flows effects of disposal are not deducted from those of acquisition. Non-cash transactions, investing and financing transactions which do not require to use cash or cash equivalents should be excluded from the cash flow statement. Such transactions should be disclosed elsewhere in the financial statement in a way that provides all relevant information about those investing and financing activities. Many investing and financing activities do not have a direct impact on current cash flows, although they do affect the capital and asset structure of an enterprise. The exclusion of non-cash transactions from the cash flow statement is consistent with the objective of cash flow statement, as those items do not involve cash flows in the current period. Examples of non-cash transactions are acquisitions of assets by assuming directly related liabilities, acquisitions of enterprise by means of issue of shares, and conversion of debt into equity. Component of cash and cash equivalent. An enterprise should disclose the component of cash and cash equivalent and should present a reconciliation of amounts of its cash flow statement with equivalent items reported in the balance sheet. In view of variety of cash management practices, an enterprise discloses the policy which it adopts in determining the composition of cash and cash equivalents. The effect of any change in the policy for determining components of cash and cash equivalents is reported in accordance to Accounting Standard AS5, net profit and or loss for the period, prior period items and changes in accounting policies. Other disclosures. An enterprise to disclose together with commentary by management the amount of significant cash and cash equivalent balance held by the enterprise that are not available for use by it. There are various circumstances in which cash and cash equivalent balance held by an enterprise are not available for use by it. For example, cash and cash equivalent balance is held by a branch of an enterprise that operates in a country where it gains control or other legal restrictions apply as a result of which balances are not available for the use by the enterprise. Additional information may be relevant to users in understanding the financial position and liquidity of an enterprise. Disclosure of this information together with a commentary by management is encouraged that and may include the amount of undrawn borrowing facilities that may be available for future operating activities and to settle capital commitments, indicating any restrictions in the use of these facilities, and the aggregate amount of cash flows that represents increase in operating activity in operating capacity separately from those cash flows that are required to maintain operating active capacity. The separate disclosure of cash flows that represent increase in operating capacity and cash flows that are required to maintain operating capacity is useful in enabling the user to determine whether the enterprise whether the enterprise is investing adequately in the maintenance and its operating capacity. An enterprise that does not invest adequately in the maintenance of operating capacity may be reducing future profitability for the sake of current liquidity and distributions to owners. Illusion Illusion 1 cash flow statement for an enterprise other than a financial enterprise. This illusion does not form the part of accounting standard. Its purpose is to insulate the application of the accounting standard. The illusion shows only current period amounts. Information from the statement of profit and loss and balance sheet is provided to show how the statement of cash flow under the direct method and the indirect method has been derived. Neither the statement of profit and or loss nor the balance sheet is presented in conformity with the disclosure and presentation requirement of applicable laws and accounting standards. The working notes given toward the end of this illusion are intended to assist in understanding the manner in which the various figures appearing in the cash flow statement has been derived. These working notes do not form the part of cash flow statement, accordingly did not be published. The following additional information is also relevant for preparation of the statement of cash flow figures in ₹000. An amount of 250 was raised from the issue of share capital and further 250 was raised from long-term borrowing. Interest expense of 400, of which 170 was paid during the period. 100 relating to interest expense of the prior period was also paid during the period. Dividend paid were 1,200. Tax deducted at source on dividend received included in tax expense of 300 for the year amounted to 40. During the period, the enterprise acquired fixed assets for 350. The payment was made in cash. Plant with original cost of 80 and accumulated depreciation of 60 was sold for 20. Foreign exchange loss of 40 represents the reduction in carrying amount of short-term investment in foreign currency designated bonds arising from the change in exchange rate between date of acquisition of the investment and the balance sheet date. Sundry debtors and sundry creditors include amounts relating to credit sale and credit purchases only. Balance sheet as at 31/12/1996 assets as rupees showing in 000 1000 as 90. In one column it is 1996 and in other column it is 1995. Assets, cash in hand and balance with bank 225. Short term investment 670. 135. Sundry debtors 1700. 1200. Interest receivable 100 mil. Inventories 900. 1950. Long term investment 2500. 2500. Fixed assets at cost 2180. Accumulated depreciation 1450. Fixed asset at cost 1910. Accumulated depreciation 1060. Fixed asset net 730. 850. Total assets 6800. 6660. Liabilities sundry creditors 150. 1890. Interest payable 230. 100. Income tax payable 400. 1000. Long term debt 1110. 1040. Total liabilities 1890. 4030. Shareholders fund share capital 1500. 1250. Reserve 3410. 1380. Total shareholders fund 4910. 2630. Total liabilities and shareholders fund 6800. 6660. Statement of profit and loss for the period ended 31/12/1996. Sales 30,650. Cost of sales 26,000. Gross profit 4,650. Depreciation 450. Administrative and selling expense 910. Interest expense 400. Interest income 300. Dividend income 200. Foreign exchange loss 40. Net profit before taxation and extraordinary item 3,350. Extraordinary item insurance proceeds from earthquake disaster settlement 180. Net profit after extraordinary item 3,530. Income tax 300. Net profit 3,230. Cash flows, direct method cash flow statement, paragraph 18A. Cash flows from operating activities. Cash received from customers 30,150. Cash paid to suppliers and employees 27,600. Cash generated from operations 2,550. Income tax paid 860. Cash flow before extraordinary item 1,690. Proceeds from earthquake disaster settlement 180. Net cash flow from operating activities 1,870. Cash flows from investing activities. Purchase of fixed assets 350. Proceeds from sale of equipment 20. Interest received 200. Dividend received 160. Net cash flow from investing activities 30. Cash flows from financing activity. Proceeds from issuance of share capital 250. Proceeds from long term borrowing 250. Repayment of long term borrowing 180. Interest paid 270. Dividend paid 1,200. Net cash used in financing activities 1,150. Net increase in cash and cash equivalent 750. Cash and cash equivalent at the beginning of period. See note number 1. 160. Cash and cash equivalent at the end of period. See note 1. 910. Indirect cash flow statement, paragraph 18B. Cash flow from operating 1996. Cash flow from operating activities. Net profit before taxation and extraordinary item 3,350. Adjustment for depreciation 450. Foreign exchange loss 40. Interest income 300. Dividend income 200. Interest expense 400. Operating profit before working capital changes 3,740. Increase in sundry debtors 500. Decrease in inventories 1,050. Decrease in sundry debtors 1,740. Cash generated from operations 2,550. Income tax paid 860. Cash flow before extraordinary item 1,690. Proceeds from earthquake disaster settlement 180. Net cash flow from operating activities 1,870. Cash flows from investing activities. Purchase of fixed assets 350, proceeds from sale of equipment 20, interest received 200, dividend received 160. Net cash flow from investing activities 30. Cash flow from financing activities, proceeds from issuance of share capital 250, proceeds from long-term borrowing 250, proceeds repayment of long-term borrowing 180, interest paid 270, dividend paid 1200. Net cash used for financing activities 1150. Net increase in cash and cash equivalents 750. Cash and cash equivalents at the beginning of period C note 1 160. Cash and cash equivalents at the end of period C note 1 910. Notes to cash flow statement, direct method and indirect method. Cash and cash equivalents. Cash and cash equivalents consist of cash on hand and balance with banks and investment in money market instruments. Cash and cash equivalents included in the cash flow statement comprise the following balance sheet amounts: 1995, cash and cash balances with bank 225, short-term investment 670, 135, cash and cash equivalents 870, 160, effects of exchange rate changes 40, cash and cash equivalents as restated 910, 160. Cash and cash equivalents at the end of period includes deposit with banks held by 100 banks of 100 held by a branch which is not freely remissible to the company because currency exchange restrictions. The company has undergone borrowing facilities of 2,000, of which 700 may be used only for future expansion. Total tax paid during the year, including tax deducted at source on dividend received, amounted to 900. Alternative presentation: indirect method. As an alternative, in an indirect method, cash flow statement operating profit before working capital changes are sometimes presented as follows: revenue excluded investment income 30,650, operating expense including depreciation 26,910, operating profit before working capital changes 3,740. Working notes: the working notes given below do not form the part of cash flow statement and accordingly need not be published. The purpose of these working notes is merely to assist in understanding the manner in which various figures in the cash flow statement has been derived, figured in 000. Cash received from customers. Sales add sundry debtors at the beginning of period. Sales 30,650, add sundry debtors at the beginning of period 1,200, total 31,850, less sundry debtors at the end of period 1,700, total 30,150. About 31,150. Cash paid to suppliers and employees. Cost of sales 26,000. Administrative and selling expense 910. Total 26,910. Add sundry creditors at the beginning of period 1,890. Inventories at the end of period 900. Total 2,790. Total 29,700. Less sundry creditors at the end of the year 150. Inventories at the beginning of year 1,950. Total 2,100. Total 27,600. Income tax paid, including tax deducted at source from dividend received. Income tax expense for the year, including tax deducted at source from dividend 300. Add income tax liability at the beginning of year 1,000. Total 1,300, less income tax liability at the end of year 400, total 900. Out of 900, tax deducted at source on dividend received amounting to 40 is included in cash flows from investing activities, and the balance 850 is included in the cash flows from operating activities. See paragraph 34. Repayment of long-term borrowing. Long-term debt at the beginning of year 1,040, add long-term borrowing made during the year 250, total 1,290, less long-term borrowing at the end of year 1,110, so net 180. Interest paid. Interest expense during for the year 400, add interest payable at the beginning of year 100, total 500, less interest payable at the end of year 230, 270. Illusion 2. illustration 2. Cash flow statement for the finance for a financial state enterprise. In this illusion does not form part of accounting standard. Its purpose is to illustrate the application of the accounting standard. The illustration shows only current period amounts. The illustration is presented using direct method. 1996 cash flow statements from operating activities. Interest and commission received 28,445, interest paid 23,463, recoveries on loan previously written off 237, cash payment to employees and supply 997, operating profit before changes in operating assets 4,224, decrease in operating assets, short-term funds 650, deposits held for regulatory and or monetary control purpose 234, funds advanced to customer 288, net increase in credit card receivable 360, out other source short-term securities 120, decrease in operating liabilities, deposits from customers 600, certificates of deposit 200, net cash from operating activities before income tax 3,440, income tax paid 100, net cash from operating activities 3,340, dividend received 250, interest received 300, proceeds from sale of permanent investment 1,200, purchase of permanent investment 600, purchase of fixed assets 500, net cash flow from investing activities 650, cash flows from financing activities, issue of share 1,800, repayment of long-term borrowing 200, net decrease in other borrowing 1,000, dividend paid 400, net cash from financing activities 200, net increase in cash and cash equivalents 4,190, cash and cash equivalents at the beginning of period 4,650, cash and cash equivalents at the end of period 8,840.